Joining me now, House Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committee member, Congressman Lee Zeldin of New York. Congressman, what are you expecting from North Korea?
The president isn't just spitballing off the top of his head when he says something like that is a deliberate statement. It would be one that is a result of advice, recommendations that he'd be getting from the people around him. We obviously have to be cautious and optimistic going into these meetings, but we need to know up front whether or not Kim Jong-un is real. He's real about denuclearization. He's real about releasing hostages that should be released. It needs to be put out up front. You should not have to wait 2 or 3 meetings. And now, is it possible Kim Jong-un is just trying to buy himself more time to finish his development of a nuclear weapon? Sure. Is it possible that he might be trying to play his neighbors as well as the United States? Sure. It's also possible that he's decided that he needs to pursue a different direction for his country. He may be serious about denuclearization. He may be willing to release these hostages. Kim Jong-un may actually want to have a productive summit, but we need to know that up front as opposed to trying to get 2 or 3 meetings down the road and get played along the way.
Congressman Steve Forbes here. Is removing U.S. troops from the peninsula, is the president going to make it clear that's not on the table for these negotiations?
My understanding is that the troop placement that exists, the exercises that take place, the United States, the status quo of our activities around North Korea are staying the same. I have not been briefed. I've not been made aware at all of that changing whatsoever. What I have been made aware of are many different ways that North Korea has been expressing a willingness to change its behavior. So it seems like the conditions are very well set for the United States going into these negotiations.
Congressman, I can't resist asking an election year question. Polls show that voters think Republicans are part of the swamp, congressional Republicans are part of the swamp, not draining the swamp. How do you get rid of that image for these upcoming elections?
As far as each member talking to their own constituents, it's important for people to get to know their own member of Congress. For one. 2 is we still have several months to go before November. There are still more bills to get done. I wish that when stuff actually gets across the finish line more, it would be more newsworthy. Sometimes it becomes more newsworthy when we fight and something doesn't get done. But I'm sure between now and November, the president will be signing good pieces of law. We might see the individual tax cuts, for example, become permanent. There will be many different ideas that do get across the finish line.
Congressman, talking about tax cuts, is there any possibility of putting a new round of tax cut proposals on the table so people have something to look forward to, not just making permanent what you did last December? Some exciting new cuts coming up?
I think we absolutely should. And I would support reducing the corporate tax rate even lower than 21%.
What about individual rates?
That would be fantastic. We should have
capital gains. That's a no-brainer.
All right, I'm going to have to jump in here now because I feel like I am now more fiscally conservative than the GOP. So it's exciting that you keep talking about tax cuts. It's amazing we had no tax reform. But my question to you is, aren't you concerned about the debt and deficit that's built up? We had a Fed official talk about that. We think within 2 years we could possibly go back into recession. You've just passed a bill that has over $1.4 trillion in deficit is coming around. I mean, aren't you concerned? I thought the GOP party were fiscally conservative. Did we lose that?
Well, first off, just so that you know who you're talking to here, I was someone who voted against the tax bill when it came up last December. I voted against the recent omnibus. A few weeks before that, I voted against the budget cap deal. So that my perspective, I believe that in talking about what else we can do for tax cuts, I believe that we should be looking at ways to cut spending, to make our government operate more efficiently, that it should be an opportunity when talking about reducing tax rates to also be talking about ways to cut spending in order to pay for those tax cuts. So, I mean, I absolutely share the concern.
Response. That's a great response. Thank you for sharing that.
And, Congressman, to bring Lindsey Bell in here, because she tweeted this yesterday about the debt ratios are expected to decline in all advanced economies but one, Lindsay, guess which one? It's the one that we're all sitting in.
Except for the U.S., it's the only one. Well, as you mentioned, the tax plan is going to increase the deficit by $1.9 trillion over 11 years. We're going to have a deficit of over $1 trillion by 2020. You say we need to cut spending. How? What is your plan going forward? What is your proposal?
Well, in the immediate short term, we should look at the omnibus that just passed and seriously consider the idea of a rescission package. We don't have to spend everything that was appropriated. The president does not have to spend everything that the executive branch was given appropriations for. So looking for ways to not spend everything that you have to is a great thing, returning money to the Treasury. So that's in the immediate short term. A little bit beyond that is that the government is funded until the end of September. So as we get closer to the end of September...
Which is only 6 months, just FYI.
Yes, right. So as you start getting closer to the end of September and you start looking at the next fiscal year, that is an opportunity as well. When we pass budgets long term, we should be passing budgets that are on a path to balance, whether it's 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. Just put it down, in paper, have the debate, let's have a discussion and be real about ways that we want to get towards balance. One other thing I just want to say about the tax cuts is that there are people, like in my district, I have middle-income itemizers who have to pay a little bit more than when it was before. But I also don't want to have any illusions or make sure that I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea here. There are a lot of businesses all across our entire country who are creating new jobs, paying people more money. They are growing. We are making a better argument for bringing businesses and liquidity back from overseas. And there are a lot of individuals, standard deduction and others, who are going to be keeping more of their paychecks. So, even though I have, my own issues, and I believe that when considering the next tax plan that we should be looking at ways to cut spending, I also don't want to make it out to be like this tax plan that was just passed, was bad for all Americans, because there are a whole lot of people who are winning.
Congressman, a quick question on health care. Premiums are going up. What are Republicans going to do for the fall elections to show people something actually might get done to stop that spiral of ever higher, paying more out of pocket for health care?
For one, on the House side, we've passed many different bills, some big bills, some small bills. The Senate, so where the House, I can think of 1,000 different bills that can directly address your question, that have passed or can pass. I don't know right now what can pass the Senate with 60 votes. And that's a huge problem, and that's one that Republicans and Democrats over on the Senate side need to work through. In the meantime, until the Senate is passing legislation going to the president that deals with health care, and again, that's a responsibility of both parties because you need 60 votes, it's the HHS, the secretary and the agency trying to find ways through their department to save money, both with regards to coverage but also the cost of care. But legislatively, I feel great about the House being able to pass all sorts of different additional things. I just can't name for you what's next in the hopper to pass the Senate.